There we go. Okay, so my name's Spencer Gordon. Fortunately, I already touched this, so I'll have to disinfect my computer, but looking around, hope you can see I've got nothing. My stuff, and no, there's nothing around me. Whoop, my computer flipped over there. So nothing over there, nothing I'm looking at. Hopefully that got across as well as it did for me. Alright, so I got a list of things on the computer of what I need to talk about, that PDF file, and of course I got my sheet brain. Alright, so starting with the cerebellum, you got cerebellum, cerebrum, is just this outer area here. I'm going to peel off our meninges, talk about those a little bit later. I might need to cut this. Hopefully you can hear me properly. Alright, I'm going to use a probe to get under theirs. There we go. It's quite the fiber there, real nice and strong. There we go. Peel in the brain. Alright, so just to keep talking when I'm doing this. So, ooh, squirted. Oh, it smells pleasant. So the first thing we got is the cerebrum. And we got the sulcus. The sulcus are the darker lines on here. So when you look at the brain, the actual lines of the wrinkles. Oh, excuse me. The smell is making my eyes water. And then we got the gyrus. These are the bumps, the raised areas in between the lines. I know that doesn't come across too well on here. Oh, and then we got the longitudinal cerebral fissure, and it's not coming apart very well right here, but that's the center line separating them into the separate hemispheres. Got the brain stem down here, coming off the back, going to the main body itself. I just tore it a little bit. Alright, and moving on, so we got the brain stem is our next topic here. Let me just peel back this a little bit. Oh, I ripped it in half. That's my bad. So we're gonna proceed the best we can. Oh, it's really hard to see with this chemical. I apologize. Ugh. So we got the first thing, got the midbrain. Ooh, I do apologize. Let me move my list a little bit. There we go. So the midbrain is basically this area I tore off. It's, includes the cerebellum and the medulla and the pons. Alright, so I can't get the meninges off here very well, so I'm going to work the best I can. So you got the midbrains here, about where my finger is with the brainstem. Sorry, really it's making my eyes water. This is controlling your hearing, your vision, your motor control, your alertness. So this is really the area that's going to control a lot of a lot of the subconscious functions you have. And then you got the cerebral peduncles. Having ripped my brain in half a little bit. Ooh. I honestly don't know if you can see this on here, but if I pull back the meninges on this side, and they're in here, that's what's the connecting. You got I believe there's one on each side. Excuse me. These connect the cerebellum to the cerebrum itself, and without these, we'd be out. A lot of functions would be gone for our body. Oh, sorry, this chemical is not going well. I know I've said that before. Alright, so we got the homunculus. Excuse me, that's very difficult for me to say. Alright, did I rip it off or is it on this side? Alright, so either way, regardless of which end it's on here, so here's the cerebellum. So I'm going to say that this is the... excuse me. I do apologize this for the colliculus. Having the back of the brain here, you're looking at the posterior side. Cerebellum would sit right where my finger is here, so this bump underneath, that's going to be our colliculus. And basically this is just to transmit sensory and motor information. It takes information from the cerebrum and cerebellum, excuse me, and it'll take a lot of the visual and sensory information and turn it into motor input. So if you hear a sound, you're looking over towards that sound. Alright, that's the superior. The inferior, going to be right underneath it, same area. Basically the same thing, just in a smaller context and setting in different areas too. Excuse me. Alright, next up on the list is the pons. Oh, I'm really getting juice everywhere. Alright, so we're coming up along. I'll hold it right side up. The spinal cord here. We got the medulla. Right on the other side of the medulla, between the medulla and the midbrain, is the pons. The pons is it connects the forebrain to the cerebellum, and it controls sleep and respiration, swallowing, bladder controls. I'm trying to get myself in the picture here. Hearing, a lot of other things that you're really not consciously activating and working on. Excuse me. And right behind that, like I said, you got the medulla. Oh, gotta make sure you can see this. Medulla right in here, coming along the brainstem. The first real swelling, one of the more primitive areas of the brain in terms of development, but still very important. Medulla is the breathing. It controls the heart rate, blood vessels function, sneezing, a few other subconscious areas. This whole brainstem area is, for the most part, subconscious, of actions and things we do that we're not aware of and have no physical control over. And if you ever watched the movie Waterboy, you know it's a great place for aggression control. Alright, so moving on to the cerebellum itself, which, if I can pull this back slightly, I don't want to harm it any more than I already have. There we go. That peeled a little bit better than previously, even though I cut the cerebellum. So I keep messing up. Cerebellum just a little bit here. Sorry if this seems... There we go. I got it to peel. Good, good, good. I don't want to damage the spinal cord. There we go. I got it to peel. There we are. So we have this cerebellum itself. And we got the vermis. If I were to cut that mid-sagittally, let me do it. Let's see. I'm going to do this right in here. Try not to cut my gloves and myself. When I cut that mid-sagittally right down the center. Hopefully that's far enough. I lost myself there. Alright, but so that's going to be the sort of center of the two hemispheres on here. You got your left and your right hemispheres. I split mid-sagittally, and you can sort of see those. And excuse me, I do apologize. The vermis is sort of the center point. It's going to be an area that's really into motor control and coordination, so you know actually where your limbs are, and hand-eye coordination, that kind of good stuff. Alright, and that's it for the cerebellum right now. We got the arbor vitae, but we'll come back to that. We have the meninges, which gave me all that trouble, made me rip part of the brain off, unfortunately. So the meninges, you got the dura mater, the arachnoid layer, and the pica mater. This is basically the protection of the brain. So if you have any skull damage that you cracked it, as long as this is intact, it's going to help prevent a lot of infections. It also holds a layer of spinal fluid around the brain so that it doesn't have any, so it always keeps fluid on it and sort of forms a blood-brain barrier, keeps the blood off the brain, and keeps stuff they want in. And I really can't separate them here, but it does go in order of that dura, arachnoid, and pica mater. And like I said, a lot of protection from here. Alright, let me scroll down my list so I can actually see what I'm doing. Alright, click off of that so I can keep moving. Alright, so next we have the pituitary gland. Alright, let's see. Pituitary, I think I've lost it. It's still connected down here in the meninges itself. This is probably very difficult to see on there, but it's that little dot where my finger is touching. It's stuck on here and fell off the rest of the brain. But the pituitary, gland, you got the posterior and posterior looking like basically small peas, and these are controlling. Trying to get myself a camera a little bit better. These are controlling sort of your hormones. They are producing and releasing these straight into the blood. These are controlled by the hypothalamus almost directly. We'll talk about that just briefly. Excuse me. And they control growth, hormonal imbalances, partially into blood pressure and some other involuntary actions. Alright, next we have the nerve. So we have the cranial nerve 1, olfactory. Excuse me. Ooh, I really did rip this guy. Alright, so our cranial nerve 1, if I can, when we're looking at the brain here from the bottom, and here's being the posterior end, we got the olfactory nerve. It's coming right up here basically. Make sure I get this on screen. And it pops up basically right where this, oh, you're not on the screen, where this flap is here. And we got, this is going to be your olfactory bulb. Basically this goes right above your sinus cavities, your nasal area there, and has receptors going into the cavity itself, picking up all the olfactory knowledge and information, and bringing it up to the brain itself. This area is pretty well and can be infected, which is an issue, but with that we'd lose a lot of sense. The bulb here comes into the actual, it is ripped unfortunately, comes into the actual brain, and that's your olfactory nerve, and it's basically just carrying the signals to the appropriate areas so that you get the actual sense. So you can have you pick it up, the reception in the bulb, and the nerve is actually transmitting it through the brain. Alright, next we have 2, the optic nerve. Optic nerve is, did I rip it a little bit? Excuse me. So optic nerve, this one's connected to the meninges here. Bottom of the brain, get that centered. So it's sitting, if you got the brain here, turning it upside down, it sits sort of right in here. Excuse me. And with the optic nerve, it goes straight to your eyes. It's connecting sort of the processing areas to the actual recepting areas, the eye itself, and the retina and all that good stuff in there. And behind that, we have the optic chiasm. The optic chiasm is sort of this, the X itself here where they come together. So that meeting point of the middle, the chiasm, what it works for is it allows signals from both eyes to go to both parts of the brain. So it's sort of like an interchange on a highway. You got signals coming in, and some of that signal from the left eye will continue onto the left brain, while some of it will go to the right, and same to the other side. You're making sure you get signals from both sides onto both, helping us sort of getting the binocular vision, and a lot of people say it's real important to human development as a whole. Alright, the optic tract, if I pick it back up, behind the X, so front of the brain would be pointing up in this position. So you have the nerve, then you have the chiasm, and the tract is just a continuation of the nerve on after the chiasm, going actually into the brain, into the processing areas. Alright, let me scroll down just a little bit on my picture. That'll mess up. I have to dirty my mouse a little bit more, unfortunately. So we have the number 3, the oculomotor nerve. Right, let me find it. Is it on my matter still? Alright, I'm still in the picture. Oh, you can see that. Alright, so if I'm not mistaken, let me double check it's not on here. Let's see. Sorry, not 100% sure on this one. I'm going to say it's, if we're saying this one is the optical, that's going to be right underneath it. So going from here, we'll go slightly down. I'm in view. Good. And you got your pituitary in here. It's going to be right off to the side here. This sort of brownish area that I'm trying to expose right off to the side. This is like I said, the oculomotor. It's basically controlling the movement of the eyes and the eyelids. This is not the only spot controlling the eyes, being a very complicated motor control, but it's one of the main ones, and you're getting a lot of the blinking, making sure everything's working right. So if you're out of focus, it's adjusting pressure, making sure everything's working properly. All right, next on the list we have the trochlear, if visible. So honestly, let's see, trochlear, that's going to be near the back. Put my brain back together so I can actually view. All right, so they're hooked together. Excuse me. Oh, this chemical really is getting to me today. And it's going to come off of sort of the pons-ish area here, right? Maybe even near the... Oh, you can't see what I'm pointing at. So you got, put the brain back together, coming in from the medulla into the pons and midbrain here. It would be here. I personally am unable to see it. I think that's just a tear in the meninges itself here. Alright, so I don't see it, but it would be sort of mid in the brain, like I said, right where the pons and midbrain are. What this does for the body is it does eye movement, sort of up and pulls down. I believe it only controls one muscle in the body, in your sort of cheek area here, and it's the muscle that pulls your eye down. So if you look down, it's working. If you look up, it's relaxing, and it stops your eyes from rolling up in your head, sort of like a possession. Right, next on our list we have the 4, 5, the trigeminal, excuse me, yeah, trigeminal nerve. All right, this one is going to be here, going back on our little ripped off area here. Unfortunately, you got it sort of posterior to everything else. It comes off, if I can put the brainstem back up here. So if they get the brainstem's up here, and this goes on top, it's coming off of in here. I am looking for it desperately. Having torn it, things are not where they should be, which is my fault. I will admit, no problem. Oops, I just ripped a different nerve. Okay. That's my issue. Alright. Oh, I'm breaking it more as I try finding this. But since I can't point it out exactly due to the damage I've done myself, still back on the midbrain pons-ish area here. It's coming off to the side, so if I hold it up here, this being the bottom of it facing the camera, it'll be right here almost. It's not this little, I don't know if you can see that piece of material coming off the brain, but it'd be right about that same area. I might adjust my position. So if you have the brain in total, it's sort of right, like I said, where that little thing would be coming out of. But this one is the trigeminal, excuse me if I say that improperly, nerve. It is controlling sort of sensation to the face. It is what's letting you bite, chew, swallow. So as the nerves go down, you basically, this being the fourth, the second controls sort of this area of your face, third controls about this area, and the fourth, which we're talking about now, the trigeminal, no, excuse me, the fifth, the third controls about here, fourth here, fifth here, so the jaw area, and it lets me talk, bite, move my jaw, use it as I need it to use. Alright, let's do what's next on the list. So we're now in the mid-sagittal view. Alright, so I'm going to cut the brain mid-sagittally. So, got that. So basically just going to go down the brain, the lateral groove here, separating the two hemispheres. Just try not to rip anything if I can deal with that. Alright, put this down. I know you can't see this, but I'm sure you've seen it many a time. Alright, so I got the brain separated here. Oops. Alright, just adjust my view of the thing. I don't need to see the nerves on this list anymore. I click back to my video so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Alright, so now we got the brain separating the two hemispheres. Put them back together for a second. Right down mid-sagittal, so it's coming apart right down the center of it. And the first thing you're going to look at is the corpus callosum, the corpusculum. And if I can see it in the camera, it's going to be this white strip between my fingers. So when it comes together, this strip right here, it's the corpus callosum. It's connecting the two ends of the brain together so they're able to share information and process together, not independently. They can function mildly without this, but it's pretty important to normal brain function. Alright, next we have the thalamus. So right under that, so you got the corpus right here, this line. Maybe I can use my probe. That'd be a good idea. And let's see what I'm doing here. So this is the corpus. The hypothalamus is this round area right underneath it. Ah! Excuse me, I stabbed myself. Alright, the thalamus, what it does is it's basically controlling a lot of the sleep and alertness of your body. So it's controlling your consciousness. If you're trying to sleep and you can't, this is an area that needs to function to make you go to lose consciousness. Oh, it really is hurting my eyes. Excuse me. Alright, and then with that going into it and sort of underneath it here, oh, dropping my brain. Right underneath that, it's sort of an indistinct looking area in here. That's the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is controlling the hormones, pituitary, basically. It's connecting the nervous system to the endocrine system so they're able to work together and report to each other and function, make the body function properly. Tearing up, apologies. I have not had this chemical for a long time. It's really getting to me. Alright, next on the list we did the thalamus, hypothalamus. We got the lateral ventricles. It's going to be, if I can see, this is going to be a little harder to see on camera. It's going to be sort of in there, and it's going to be this hollow area, and you got one on each side. You have the lateral ones. These are areas, as any ventricle is in any organ of the body, areas that are filled with fluid, whether it be blood or otherwise. These ones being full of, excuse me, the spinal fluid, and so, sort of being the supply area for the rest of the body. They are filled by the, I'm going to skip one here, the coronoid plexus. It's an area within that capillary. You're not going to be able to see it very well, although I can bunch this apart a little bit. It's the capillaries in there. They're pulling out the blood plasma, that clear, watery part of the blood, and this is going into making just the spinal fluid, pulling the nutrients, the water part out of the brain, the blood, excuse me, and circulating it through the body, all the way down the spine, all across the brain, making sure everything's fluid and rich in there. You're not getting too much oxygen, but that's not necessary for this. You got blood vessels and other areas for that. You also have the septum pediculum, excuse me, which is going to be right in sort of the same area there. And it doesn't have quite any particular function, although the lack of it, people born with mutations that, excuse me, don't have it, have been known reported to have malformed other parts of the brain, excuse me, especially like the hypothalamus and other control areas. So while it's not exactly an important organ, at least from our understanding, it does play a role that we're not sure about in formation and other normal brain functions. Alright, then we have the third ventricle. The third ventricle really is only seen when you can put the brain together. The third ventricle is basically where the two lateral ones come together. Right in this area here, you can see that dark spot on the corpus, right above my middle finger on this hand. It's sort of the meeting point, and it lets it channel through the rest of the body. So you have the two big ventricles holding the liquid, and the third is sort of the aqueduct in terms of function to move it around the brain. Alright, and then we have the cerebrum aqueduct. Well, speaking of aqueducts, and if I'm not mistaken, it's coming under the cerebellum here. Sorry, yeah, cerebellum. I did say that right. And you got the brain stem here into the spinal cord. It's going under that. If I get my probe in there without stabbing it, I stabbed the brain. It's coming through this, coming out, and this is what's a channel allowing it to go down the spinal cord to the rest of the body, not just the brain. Oh. And that would lead into the fourth ventricle, which is going to be the hollow space sort of in and around the spinal cord, letting it flow freely. Excuse me. Alright, next we have the arbor vitae. So, having cut the cerebellum previously, let's see if you can actually see this on the camera. I hope that's coming across. The arbor vitae is that tree-like sort of looking area with the white matter being the sort of limbs and the branches of the tree, and gray matter being the rest of it. This is an area that's in the cerebellum, and it controls the sort of motor functions, so coordination, your ability to move freely. This is where a lot of conscious thought of movement and doing what I want to do. Sometimes it doesn't work well, and you rip things, unfortunately. But that's for another matter. Alright, into the spinal cord itself. I'm going to cut it just so you can get a cross-sectional view. Let's label these things. No, it looks all the same color, unfortunately. And that's probably a byproduct of this chemical that's causing me so much trouble. But, so you got the spinal cord. I just, cut a little chunk off. It's still attached by some fibers there. But on the inside of the spinal cord, you have the gray matter, which is also the visible part of here, the brain itself. So on the outside of the brain, you have gray matter, with the white matter being the myelinated side on the inside. And the switches in the spinal cord coming down. So you get the spinal cord having the gray matter in the spine with the white matter on the outside. When you're going down it, next one and the last one here is dorsal and ventral roots, and you really can't see the gray matter in here anyways. I'll hold up the camera, see if that's pretty clear. You really can't see any color, at least not with my eye. Being full of tears is there. But this is where it's coming down the body, and you got the roots. So when it comes down, it's got these little horns on it basically. And these are the areas where the gray matter sort of pops out of the spinal cord, goes into the body, and this is where you get the nerves input. So as you're going up your body, there's areas where we'll connect in, so you can get signals across, and it really doesn't flow in or out anywhere else behind these horns, and they'll have their areas throughout the body here. This video is a little longer than I thought it was going to be, half hour. I do apologize for sniffling, tearing up. This chemical is hurting my eyes, and the unfortunate ripping of my brain. I'm trying to peel it off. But oh well, these things do happen, and it's not a bad thing. Spencer Gordon here. I hope this covers everything I need to cover. I think that's everything on the list. And I'll see you next time. Alright, turn you off.